Welcome to Indie Resources' second video on C#. This is Halls of Valhalla. Make sure you have Visual Studio, which hopefully you have by now installed. If not, pause this and install it. You can go to Microsoft.com, or you can just type in Visual Studio Express. It's a free edition. That's all you'll need. You'll be able to do the same things I am. This up here may look a little different, but it's not going to make much of a difference. So to get started, let's go to File, New Project. And you can go, make sure when you get it, you get the C# version. You don't have to get the whole version, but at least get the C#. You don't need Visual Basic or C++ or the web or anything like that. But so go into Visual C#. You can just go to Windows and you can click on Console Application. Don't worry about if your framework's not the same. It's not going to hurt anything for what we're doing right now. You can come down here and you can name it. I'm going to name mine Tutorial. And I'm going to hit OK, and it's going to build my project. To start off with, something I've noticed in every video tutorial on Visual Studio and every book that I've read, they spend hours, it seems like, going over all these buttons, all of these toolbars right in the beginning, and all it does is make you fall asleep. It gets you just demotivated. It's not a whole lot of fun, and to be honest with you, you're not going to be using a lot of this right now, so it's not important. So I'm not going to go over it. That's the kind of stuff you use as you go. It's a lot easier to learn if you need to use it. So we're going to skip into some coding. I'm not going to go over a lot of this using just yet. I'm not going to go over the namespace because we will go over that, but now is not the time. I kind of want to get into some fun stuff to motivate you and get things going. I'm going to miss explaining a couple things, but it'll all come together. The other thing is, I'm going to make mistakes. Like I said, I'm not a professional at C#, but we're going to fix them, and sometimes it's better to see mistakes made because you might make the same ones and see how they're fixed. Especially because before this I've been coding PHP and JavaScript all day, so my syntaxes are going to be kind of crossed on some of these, but we'll get through it. And that's one thing I can't stand about tutorials when they're perfect. It's just like, what about the errors? The errors are the #1 thing you learn from. So to get started, we have our program here, and this program.cs, this is the main program. If you're a web programmer, think of it as your index.php. It's what's going to run your whole program. Everything is going to branch off from that. And you see here we have our class program. And the one thing, I'm kind of weary about saying this, but it was true for me. I always pictured the classic class explanation as being a blueprint, as being this stamp that stamps out objects, and that is what it does. But if you stick with just the thought of that's what a class is, you're going to get a little confused whenever classes start doing a little more than that. Classes can do a lot of things. They're more than functions, because I originally thought, they're just like a function, but a class is actually built of a lot of functions, methods, constructors, things like that that help them do what they're going to do. And you will have classes that they don't really seem like this blueprint. They actually do a little more than that. And that's kind of what I'm going to show you, because to me that's kind of important. I know with me I had a lot of trouble, and as easy as it actually is, I never seen anywhere where anybody would actually explain what this static void or public, or what all that meant, public and private, which I know what public and private is, but I didn't know how they correlated with what was going on. So that's something I'm going to spend a little bit of time on, because I could never find anywhere else to really explain it. So let's just make something happen. This void main, this main method inside this class program is what's going to run always at the start of your program. So let's have it do something. Let's do a console. I tell you what, before we do that, let's just run this just to see what happens. And you'll notice I'll hit Control S a lot to save. Hit play, and it just DOSBox pops up and it goes away. Well, why is that? Well, there was nothing there, and there's nothing saying for it to not close. There's nothing to say, hey, waiting on user or anything. So let's do that. Let's do a console. And I'm telling you, if you've never used Visual Studio and you're used to using Dreamweaver or Notepad, you are going to love this IntelliType, because it just makes things so much easier. So if you notice, as I started typing console pops up. I'm going to do console.readKey. And if you've never programmed before, this is going to be a little harder for you. But if you've programmed in, say, PHP or JavaScript, let's say, you're going to be used to functions, and functions always have the parentheses, and that's what we're going to do here. We're actually calling a method inside of the console, and it's called readKey. So if we save that, and when you hit play, it auto-saves for you, but I'm just used to it. So when you hit play, now all of a sudden we have it waiting on us. It may be blank, but it's waiting on us. If we just hit a key, it goes away. So we managed to create a little bit on the console, and we are going to spend some time on the console because, of course, this is a console application. Think of it like a DOSBox application. So let's do something more. Let's do a console dot read line. I tell you what, let's do a write line. And oops. And let's just say, I'm not going to do hello world, but I'm going to do hello indie resource community. And we're going to close that off. And so, just to kind of show you real quick, I'm going to comment that out. So, technically we should see this console write line hello indie resource community. If we hit play, we kind of seen it for a second, but it went away. Once again, all it's being told is to print it, and then it just ends the application because there's nothing there to stop it. So we'll go back and do this read key and hit play. There we go. We've printed something out. I know it's nothing spectacular like creating an MMO, but hey, it's a start, right? So let's go beyond this. And to take this a little further, we're actually going to create a new class. So we go over here to tutorial. We right mouse and we go to add and we click new item, and we're going to add a class, and we're going to name this class print title. Let's just name it that for now. And we're going to add. So it's created our new class. If you notice, it uses the same namespace as tutorial, which is actually the name of our program, and it should be whatever program you used. And this is basically all it does. It just there's our class. So first thing we really want to do is we want to create a method inside that class. We want to give that class an ability to do something. And so I'm going to create this method. And the first thing before I get into that, this class I'm only going to use once because it's going to just call a title. So it's you kind of have your two different type of classes. You have a class, well, not really two different types, but let's say two different types for this reason only. You have a class that can stamp out multiple objects. Let's say like a creature class. There's going to be several creatures, so that is a class that's just going to be just like this. It's just going to say class, and let's say it was creatures. You're going to have just tons of different instances of this class. A print title class only gets built once. It only gets run once, so it is actually a static class because it's just one type. It's not dynamic. It's just built one time. And usually usually when the program is built, that's when your class is being built, and that's it. So that's why it's called static. And now we're going to build a method inside of this class. Think of a method like a function inside of the class. It's actually something that the class can do, like with creatures. A creature can swing an axe, so that is actually a method inside that creature class. They're going to swing a axe. So we will start our method, and because this method, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make it show, we're going to call it show title. It is actually also static because it's only going to be built once. So we're going to call it static. It's going to be public, and the other alternative is private. What that means is if it's private, it's only available inside this class. Only anything inside this class can call this. So if I was to call it inside a program, which I'll show you in a minute, it won't be able to see it because it's private. But we're going to call it public, so it can be called anywhere. So even if we're not in the class, we can still call it by doing print title dot whatever we name it. So let's do a static public. Now this class this method is not going to it's not going to return anything. And this was always something hard for me to understand because when I first was looking into the void and the type of integers that it would return, I was thinking, well, if you call a method and you tell it to print out to the screen, isn't that returning something to the screen? But that's not the way to look at it. You have to look at it as, is it returning anything to the original class or method that called it? And in this case, we're not returning anything back. And before I get into too much explanation, let me go ahead and show you, and then we'll go. So since it's not returning anything, we're going to go void, and then we're going to call this show title. And if you ever did programming before, this will look familiar with you. You need to have those parentheses as just like with running a function or anything like that. So now if we go back over here to program, let me save this. If we go back over to program and we attempt to call that class, which is print title, and then we hit dot, you'll now see show title. We can now call that method, and what it'll do is it'll do whatever's inside of that method, which is nothing, so it won't do anything. Now, what I meant by void, now let's take this and let's put it in our actual, whoops, I goofed. And by the way, I'm Control-C-ing and Control-V-ing. I'm not actually going to go down to edit, copy, and all that stuff. You guys know what I'm doing. We're going to cut this out, which is Control-X. We're going to bring it over here, and we're going to paste it in, Control-V. And now this show title is actually going to do whatever's inside of here. So what I mean by the reason why I put that void in that, like I said, I am going to spend some time on this because this was something it took me a while to understand, is this is not returning anything to the main program. It's not sending anything back. Now, let's say I did a a result equals print title show title. That is, and the reason why I'm getting a red here is because we would have to, we have to assign the variable, say what it's going to be or whatever. But I'm just showing this as an example. We're going to remove this. If I wanted a variable to turn into whatever this is, then I would need to return something back to it, and I would have to get rid of that void and put a string or whatever it is. And that's the reason why I'm getting that red, is because I'm saying it's void, and in Visual Studio saying, whoa, you said that was void. Now you're saying that it's returning something, so that's what it is. And I'll show you that here in a minute, but that was something that always confused me, and I want to make sure to go over it. So that's why we have this void here, or actually void here. So let's try our program. Let's see what happens. Well, look at there, same thing. So even though we changed up the code, what we did was, in the main program, we called that class, this class, and then we called that method. So for now, I'm going to stop the video here, and then the third video will go a little more in depth.